Hello and welcome to Face on Victoria Indie TV. I'm your host, Paul Stein, and today we're talking with Brett Price, a local practitioner for the Falun Gong. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
So, I'm relatively new to this, other than what you've given me with the links to research and do my own research. I'm an avid online researcher, so I have read many blogs and watched many videos. For the benefit of myself and for the viewers, could you please briefly describe what is Falun Gong and the origins, the philosophy, and things like that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So Falun Gong is an ancient self-cultivation way. So it comes from China. Being ancient, it was passed down to just one person at a time throughout the generations. And then in 1992, it was made public so that the busy working professionals and family members can practice it for themselves. So it consists of 5 exercises and 3 principles. So the exercises, they say open energy channels, and they have an effect of really relieving stress. People get much better sleep. They find that their illnesses, even their terminal and their chronic illnesses, kind of evaporate, disappear when they start to really commit themselves to this practice. I'll talk a little bit about that. The principles are truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. So people, it's very loosely organized. There's no classes, there's no sign-ups, there's no rosters. It doesn't even cost anything. There's no money that changes hands. So people who want to just practice being a truthful, kind, and patient person in their everyday life. And with the 5 exercises and the 3 principles, they find that no matter how much they practice it, they're always finding better and better health. They're always finding better and better spiritual kind of calm. The purpose of it is to just reunite with your original true self. So everyone is just kind of realizing their own true self. One of the beliefs that's put out in the books, so there's books that go along with the practice, is that the universe and people are essentially good. That our original true selves are truthful, kind, and compassionate and patient. So it's just about letting go of attachments, passing trials and tribulations. And this is actually an ancient science. So it's called Falun Gong. Another name for it is Falun Dafa. So it's interchangeable. Part of that is because when it was introduced to the public in 1992, Qigong was very popular. So it was presented as, which it is, a lineage of Qigong.
Okay.
But then throughout history, its original name was Falun Shulian Dafa. Okay. So the law wheel cultivation practice of the Great Way.
Cool.
So then the way being synonymous with the Tao and with the Fa, that Buddhist practice as well. So the way that we practice is just encompassed in those 3 words: truthfulness, compassion, tolerance.
I think that pretty much sums up what peace is all about, really. And if we took that on a political platform or even on a global platform, we'd see a lot bigger changes in this world dramatically, like within a day, right?
Within a day, yeah. Definitely. I mean, there's really no. It's interesting because the purpose of it is not to make change in the human world. You know, there's no desire for power. There's never been a plea for any sort of political party or partisanship or anything like that. But anyone is free to practice it. Politicians are free. Businessmen are free to. All kinds of people. And then, think about if everybody was practicing that and understood the principles of cause and effect.
Absolutely.
So, like, when you do good things come. Mm-hmm. When you do bad things happen eventually. So
it's also the state of your mind. If you're thinking negatively in a negative context, you tend to attract that that's not solely that's what happens, but that's what you tend to. You wake up in the morning, you stub your toe, you're late for work, the toast burns, your coffee's cold, traffic's bad. It's just it's just a downward spiral. Whereas if you are on a positive mind frame, you're relaxed, you're breathing well, then you can have time to think, and you can think about positive things, which in fact do get created when you think about it. So
so it's like an upward spiral.
Yeah.
You know, it's quite amazing. It's really powerful, very simple, not always easy though, right? So I mean, if someone's really being tested, you know, and I really want to get angry, you know, that's where the practice really kicks in, you know, and so a lot of people will, let's say, do the exercises in the morning and then go on with their day, and then throughout the day they face tests, you know, just ordinary tests.
So I do yoga. Is it anything like yoga? Is there any similarities with yoga? Because yoga is pretty big in the East, and it's come over here to the West, and it's still huge. And a lot of people are kind of finding their spirituality within yoga.
That's interesting.
So is that anything like?
I used to do a lot of yoga as well. I actually studied the yamas and niyamas and the 8 limbs of yoga. You know, there's it also is a very ancient cultivation way as well. I think that, you know, I don't know, you know, I mean, what my understanding is there are 2 lineages,
yes.
right? So a lot of well, because the Tao is the Tao and the truth is the truth. Li Hongzhi, who's the master of Falun Gong, he's a teacher. Something he points out is that there's many different cultivation ways. In fact, there's thousands of cultivation ways, and each one of them enlightens to the Tao in different ways and at different levels. So there's so many ways out there. Yeah. That's
cool. Well, you mentioned that the belief is that people are naturally good. So how did we go bad? Where did we go bad? Is that from birth? Is that from, like, how is it that we're not being natural, in other words?
That's a great question.
It's because I believe that too. I believe that people in nature are good. They're generous, they're kind. I drive all day, and I come to a busy intersection and I see odor. Not necessarily because there's a police officer telling what people to do, or because there's lights, but because, you know, I'm driving down the road and a little kitty crosses the road and cars almost crash into each other because of this little tiny kitty, right?
Yeah.
So I agree with you that people are naturally, genuinely good, but for some odd reason, probably because of our upbringing and what the environment around us, we've become more, I guess, egocentric or consumerists, very looking towards what I can get rather than what I can give, kind of thing?
Yeah. That's a really good question. The first thing it makes me think of is that Buddha, back in like 2,500 years ago, said that there will be a Dharma ending period. So a period of time when people have lost the Dharma or the Tao or the basic innate morality that keeps things together, that there'll be a time when that is the ending of it. It's funny because the yogis say that too in Ayurveda. Yeah. They measure things in, I think, 600,000 years, something like that, and apparently we're at the end of this cycle. The ancient Greeks did too. They talked about the Golden Age, the Silver Age, and the Iron Age. So as things go on, and we can see this in a piece of fruit, they degenerate.
Absolutely.
Right. So
everything has a cycle.
Yeah, there's a cycle to things. You see this in civilizations. Yeah. You know, they rise and they fall. Lifetimes, things like that. So all these cultivation ways, I mean, in a way, I think it's part of my practice is to be compassionate and forgive, even myself, when I do act selfishly.
That's a big part.
It's difficult, you know, and even to just recognize it in myself. But then there's a line I'm reminded of, which is to solve the fundamental issue. And my understanding is the fundamental issue is this whole cycle. That's what the Buddhists talk about. That's what all these ways talk about, is birth and death, the cycle of birth and death. So are we here just to get in front of the other guy on the freeway? Are we here just to make money, to get that thing that we, and it's short-sighted, and it's not all bad. I don't think it's evil, but it's short-sighted. Or is there a greater purpose to why we're actually here?
Yeah.
So I think that's why Falun Gong became so popular in China, when it was introduced, because that's actually a very, very spiritual civilization, very connected into its 5,000 years of civilization. We are too, but we're a younger civilization. They're very, very connected. So when they heard about these things, it really sparked some truth deep inside of them. Like going back into years ago, self-cultivation, and this Qigong was actually a science that pervaded society in China. So students would breathe and meditate before they would, study. Calligraphers, same thing, everybody would center themselves. And the doctors actually had the vision of third eye open because they had cultivated themselves to such a high level that they could use those abilities for the benefit, right? So in 1982, it became very, very popular. 100 million people practicing it in China, and then quickly spread around the world. Now it's practiced in over 80 countries, translated into at least 24 languages. So all of the
So it seems to be working. In other words, it seems to be spreading,
for
a
large number of people.
Or at least there seems to be a demand. In other words, so that what you're saying about the greater purpose could actually be self-fulfilling because this is evidence of it. I remember of an old saying. I don't know if it's a Buddhist saying or not, but it says, big ego, big problems, small ego, small problems, no ego, no problems. So you kind of remove yourself, then you find that there's no problems, right? Yeah. So I guess that may be the same kind of context in which you get into your meditative practices from. How does this help the individual, though? Like, how does this help the individual with their life? Like, does it help them heal their body? Does it help them with their stress loads? Does it help them with their spirituality? What exactly does it do for the individual?
Yes.
Okay.
To all those things for certain. People have had amazing experiences. I've met a man in his 70s who lost hearing in one ear. When he started practicing Falun Gong, it came back. You can hear in both ears now. I know another fellow I was just talking to who had scoliosis his whole life and insomnia, and it caused a lot of pain. He was a smoker. A lot of smokers have great experiences with Falun Dafa. Within a short period of time, he just lost the desire to smoke. It wasn't like he really pursued that. His body just said he just couldn't. Like, he would throw up and he just couldn't smoke anymore. And so obviously that has great benefits. And then
there's always a purging when you got to relieve something, right?
Yeah, exactly. His scoliosis was taken care of. He would stand up for the meditation and hear all these cracks happening in his back. And so the scoliosis is gone. Same with insomnia. There's even more profound stories where people have terminal illnesses. And that's the thing, is it's not meant for healing. That's not the purpose of it. But if people really commit to this path and really, if their motive is to unite with their original true self, come what may, then what they find is the doctors take another x-ray and they can't believe it. The first x-ray must have been wrong because it doesn't fit within their paradigm of medicine.
Yeah. Well, here in the West we have allopathy, or allopathic medicine, which is not necessarily good or bad. Everything has its place. But in the East, it's very spiritual, naturopathic, or
there's traditional Chinese medicine.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's different. It's a different type of thinking and not attacking, but solving a problem that's within you. It's not so much, let's get rid of that gallbladder or let's get rid of that left breast.
Yeah.
It's where's it coming from, and
it's
it sounds like
it's
kind of
person like a whole person.
Well, it is. It's a system, and like an engine, your engine couldn't run without an alternator. So how could you run without a kidney, right? So
definitely. I mean, I think that's part of the science that's going on, which is that people can't truly be healthy unless they're really healthy psychologically, emotionally, spiritually.
Absolutely.
So I think we have been very materially focused, and maybe more and more as time goes on. So we sense there's something wrong not by wrong, I mean, our spiritual sides have been
We're
kind
imbalanced.
of,
Something's imbalanced in the world.
Yeah.
The energy, whatever that may be, is imbalanced. And I think a lot of people are seeing that around the world. So in China, this is a big thing. So does that mean that there's big imbalance in China?
Great question. Where do I start with that? There's a very big imbalance in China. There is, well, to start with, Falun Gong is illegal in China. It comes from China. It's an expression and a vehicle for the 5,000 years of Chinese culture. But the communist regime is vehemently against it. So much so that in a particular year, they devoted something like a quarter of their GDP to trying to wipe it out. And this is, I mean, it is within China, but actually each consulate around the world has orders to also carry out this this mandate to eradicate Falun Gong. So that started in 1999. From 1992 to 1999, there were so many people practicing, right? 100 million people. There's great photos of people in their communist military garb, soldiers, Chinese soldiers, and they're practicing Falun Gong. So yeah, everybody was finding great health benefits. They could actually measure how much they saved in healthcare because people were practicing Falun Gong. So many people. News reports were coming out that great altruistic deeds were being done, and they often found that it was Falun Gong practitioners who did it. So very selfless deeds that, let's say, benefited a whole village or a particular family. This person saved someone even though they didn't even know them. Then what happened in 1999 was Jiang Zemin, who was the communist head person.
The dictator, I guess?
Yeah, pretty much, the appointed.
Appointed by who, though?
Well, yeah. Himself. It's a whole, it's definitely a regime.
Yes,
right?
Definitely.
So it's a violent, atheistic regime. And holding on to that power and making sure that nobody sees or acknowledges or especially punishes them for the deeds that they've done is kind of their top modus operandi, right? And I'll get into that a little bit later. But even against the good counsel of his cabinet members, whose wives were practicing Falun Gong and who could see so many people were practicing it and all the benefits, he still ordered the eradication of it. So there was a great crackdown. You see photos from beforehand when hundreds of people were in the parks just practicing it, And then I've spoken with some people who have had the experience where they were those in the parks, and then strange things started happening around them, photos being taken, and then all of a sudden one day there was this crackdown, and people were hauled to jail, they were beaten, they were put in brainwashing centers, and the whole purpose was to get them to stop practicing Falun Gong. It wasn't
very dangerous. We don't want you to be truthful and compassionate to people. It's very dangerous to crack down on them, right?
Well, exactly.
It's very strange.
It is really strange.
Like how much of a defense could that be? I could see if these people were grabbing arms and plotting to take over the regime. I could understand. I could kind of quasi understand taking force, but at the same time, like how threatening can this practice be? Like that's what I don't understand.
Yeah, it's a very good question. It's very difficult for, I think, Westerners to understand because partly there's been a wall, kind of a media blackout, but also a very careful media campaign to keep people from knowing what's been going on, people outside China. Even inside China, every type of media, even the sitcoms on television, are written by the Communist Party or approved by them. That has changed a bit. I mean, you hear inklings of this and inklings of that, and the truth will always find a way through. But as a rule, that's how things are. So
it's interesting that you mentioned that the state will produce this information, and I bet it demonizes the Falun Gong practitioners.
Oh, very much so. I mean, to set 100 million people as criminals, and every spouse, every parent, every brother and sister, if you're a fellow student, if you're a teacher, you could turn in a Falun Gong practitioner and get $5,000, things like that. So the reason that can even that can even be fathomable is because there was laid down a culture of this. I mean, it's almost like any abusive relationship. There was extreme violence and force used during the Cultural Revolution. And then when that stopped, well, it didn't really stop, right? It was just, now the threat of violence is constant. And then there's always that reminder, you know, they'll take away, somebody will just disappear one day, or they'll come back and they'll be completely emaciated in black and blue because they did something that was, you know, they just stepped a little bit out of line. There's called the 95-5 tactic. They'll take 5% of the population, turn 95% of the population against them until, well, during the Cultural Revolution, they would actually kill all those people until they were gone. And then they had to find a different 5%. So it's this scapegoating struggle. A tenet of communism is constant struggle.
I guess communism is rampant here in the West, because obviously we've got constant struggle as well.
Corruption.
It's always that scapegoat. That's what
everywhere.
I see. That's what I see as a pattern. No matter really where you look. Obviously in China that's evident, but you see a pattern of pointing out the 5% and then getting public support for the 95% to carry on these acts of aggression. Like I learned in school through psychology classes that there's really 3 types of control, and that's economic control. If I take away your house, if I burn down your house, I essentially control you. If I dump your currency, then you know, your economic collapse. There's also spiritual or mind control or religious control, in which God has told me that I am the Pharaoh and you shall listen to me, right? And the last one is physical control or coercion. Coercion is obviously the one that is most widely used. You say they turn out black and blue.
Well, there's many ways. I mean, we could do a whole show on just the coercion, you know, and the tactics that are used, and sort of just to give you an example, in Victoria here, there's a shop owner in Chinatown who I was having a conversation with. He grew up in southern China. When he was in grade 1, 2 Communist Party members came in and taught them a song about how the Communist Party loves you more than your mother and father. And when it comes down to it, you should be more loyal to the Communist Party than to your mother and father. That was grade 1, and they're singing a song about it. So it starts there, and it continues and continues. Of course, lies and coercion are wrong anywhere, but this is is really, there's unprecedented levels of it in China. And then what happens is, well, he's very glad that his children are growing up here. Let's just put it that way.
Absolutely.
So then when it comes to the persecution, people are either turning a blind eye or they're complicit with it. It goes back to the nature of the Communist Party. There's a book called The 9 Commentaries on the Communist Party that won an award from the Asian American Journalists Association. And it outlines why the Communist Party would be doing these sorts of things. Because I don't know if I completely connected the dots, so let me just let you know that.
Sure, yeah.
If anyone is caught with a book, Falun Gong, that explains truthfulness, compassion, tolerance, or is caught practicing a meditation practice. This is true with Buddhists and Christians as well. But the attack against Falun Gong is really surpasses any other persecution, even to the point that their people's organs are being harvested from their bodies. And the funny thing is that if somebody were to give up the practice, no more persecution. It isn't like you're labeled that way for the rest of your life. If someone signs a piece of paper that says, I won't practice Falun Gong anymore, they're completely free to go. So it's really this intense mind control where if either you're with us or you're against us, that's an important part.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then it's also this very violent and atheist regime where they use tactics like if a woman won't, let's say, sign this, they'll bring in her husband and he'll have to beat her.
Yeah.
These terrible atrocities. So what the 9 Commentaries found is that it's very cult-like. You know, it's quite a misnomer to talk about it in a political arena because it really doesn't fit within. It's, you know, it goes way beyond politics. It's an everyday, pervasive kind of a thing. This whole communist, you know.
And it primarily
mentality.
attacks your mind. It attacks your belief systems. It attacks the way you think.
Yeah.
Which obviously they don't want you to think about that. And you say, you know, if you renounce your honor to it or your practice, they'll let you go. But in the fact, you're not being truthful by yourself doing that. So
that's the thing, is that people who feel that they've learned the meaning of life, you know, and learned something that's so beneficial, the tables get turned sometimes. The silver lining is that oftentimes if you can sit down, let's say you've just been arrested in China, and you're sitting down with those police chiefs. There are stories upon stories of that one practitioner being able to speak to the heart of those police chiefs and say, look, I know that if you do this, this, and this, you'll get a promotion. Because they actually measure and promote and give wages based on the beatings of Falun Gong practitioners,
I can
based
see that.
on how many conversions they get and things like that. So they use terrible torture methods like, terrible torture methods like beatings and rapes and force feeding and being tied up in positions for many days. We can talk about how that actually filters to our daily lives through forced labor, you know, labor making the things that we might be able to purchase in stores. The medical community faces the issue of illegal organ harvesting, where now there's doctors who are concerned about training Chinese surgeons because of what they may go back and do. And so people have this choice on their conscience. So being quiet and complicit with that, we hope, everybody hopes, I think, is not an option.
Well, you don't want to rock the boat, right? You don't want to be that guy, that individual that gets taken away, that gets beat up. I think it's...
there's an issue of safety.
It's that whole, absolutely. And we are social beings. We like being in groups. You isolate us, and obviously you break down because that's a psychological tactic.
Yeah.
But there's big business involved here. There's hospitals that, like, this is, I guess it's legal. You're saying this organ harvesting is legal in...
Well,
or it's just totally unknown, and that's where they get their organs from, and it's totally under the radar. Nobody knows. You
know, that's a great question, and I brought a video to kind of lay the foundations of what's going on, and how can they even sort of get away with it, right? Okay. So maybe it's about an 8-minute video. Maybe we'll show it to the viewers.
We'll show you the video. The title is "Killed for Organs: China's Secret State Transplant Business." So we'll show you this video now, and then we'll return and talk a little bit more about that.
Мы называем это новой для мира формой зла. До этого никакое правительство не делало таких вещей. Они взяли большую группу собственных граждан и сказали: мы собираемся убить вас без суда и следствия и продать ваши органы. Пациент из США или Канады, к примеру, может ожидать пересадки органов в конкретную дату. Это преступление против человечности. Это отвратительно, и это необходимо остановить.
It's a crime against humanity. It's abhorrent, and it needs to stop.
Если вы собираетесь в Китай на операцию по пересадке печени, которую вам сделают в течение 3 недель, пока вы будете там находиться, это означает, что некто собирается спланировать казнь. Он проведет анализы крови и тканей потенциальной жертвы и подготовит этого человека до вашего отъезда. Начиная с 1999 года число операций по трансплантации внезапно резко увеличилось.
Китай проводит больше операций по пересадке органов, чем любая другая страна в мире, кроме США. Но в отличие от других стран, в Китае Китае отсутствует эффективная программа жертвования органов. Традиционно китайцы убеждены, что даже после смерти тело должно оставаться целым. Как заявил замминистра здравоохранения КНР Хуан Цзэфу, ежегодно донорами для 7000 операций по пересадке органов становятся умершие люди, что более 90% из них казненные заключенные. При этом фактическое количество казненных преступников в Китае считается государственной тайной. Согласно подсчетам организации Amnesty International, их число составляет лишь около 1700 человек.
Эти числа абсолютно не сходились, между ними слишком большая разница.
Учитывая, что количество казненных заключенных всего 1700 человек и отсутствует действующая система жертвования органов, откуда же ежегодно берутся остальные тысячи органов? Джао Шихуань была отправлена в лагерь принудительного труда за то, что занимается Falun Gong.
В каждом лагере принудительного труда, куда я попадала, они проверяли состояние нашего здоровья. Они брали у нас кровь на анализ. Это делалось во всех лагерях.
Мы подсчитали, что в период с 2000 по 2005 годы было проведено 41 500 операций по пересадке органов, источники которых никак не объяснялись. Я совершенно убежден, что в период с 1999 года и далее органы извлекают у заключенных, в особенности у практикующих Фалуньгун.
Женщина-полицейский забрала нас в больницу лагеря принудительного труда Масанцзя. И я поняла, что они берут анализы мочи и крови, чтобы проверить функции печени.
Врачи приезжают в эти лагеря, проверяют их глаза, исследуют их органы ультразвуком и другими подобными приборами. И такому тщательному медицинскому осмотру в этих лагерях подвергали только их практикующих Фалуньгун.
В 2006 году двое канадцев, международный адвокат-правозащитник Дэвид Мейтес и бывший госсекретарь Канады по Азиатско-Тихоокеанскому региону Дэвид Килгур начали расследование утверждения о принудительном извлечении органов в Китае. Они обнаружили по меньшей мере 52 косвенных доказательства этой практики, в том числе веб-сайты китайских больниц, которые предлагали подобрать человеку орган менее чем за неделю.
Это просто невозможно, если вы не располагаете неограниченным источником органов, причем это должны быть живые люди. Речь идет о живых донорах. По сути, операция по трансплантации сама по себе являлась для них формой казни. Это были живые люди, которых убивали ради получения их органов. Это похоже на какой-то гротескный ресторан. Вы приходите и выбираете себе в аквариуме лобстера. Однако здесь речь идет о людях. Военные зарабатывают на этом деньги, больницы зарабатывают на этом деньги, посредники зарабатывают на этом деньги. Речь идет именно о деньгах, о многомиллионном бизнесе.
Журналист и писатель Этан Гутман решил провести собственное независимое расследование.
У нас есть свидетели исчезновений. Людей подвергали медосмотрам, после чего они исчезали. Множество людей пустили целые тюремные камеры. Это указывало на то, что за всем этим стоит нечто намного большее.
Наряду с тибетцами и прихожанами домашних христианских церквей миллионы практикующих Falun Gong в Китае подвергаются репрессиям за свою веру. В 1999 году глава коммунистической партии Дзян Зэминь издал приказ разорить их финансово, опорочить их репутацию и уничтожить их физически. С тех пор тысячи практикующих Falun Gong попросту пропали без вести.
Что произошло с пропавшими без вести? Насколько нам известно, они по-прежнему находятся в этих лагерях. Многих убили ради получения их органов, но остальные по-прежнему там, и они являются для Китая живым банком органов. В 1999 году насчитывалось 150 центров по трансплантации органов. 6-7 лет спустя их было уже 600. За такой короткий период времени их число увеличилось в 3 раза, причем не было никакой программы жертвования органов. Военные больницы в Китае находятся под надзором. Они ничего не могут сделать без согласования с руководством компартии. Принимали ли решение о казни тайные суды тройки? Нет. Все это делало именно правительство. Это убийство, за которыми стоит государство. Это преступление против человечности. Мы должны сделать все возможное, чтобы выявить тех людей, которые причастны к этому, и занести их в список для осуществления правосудия. В 2006 году, когда появилась эта информация, и мы поняли, что они убивают узников совести ради получения их органов, братья вышли вперед, чтобы остановить это. Ежедневно в Китае порядка 10 человек убивают ради получения органов, поэтому мы обязаны сообщить об этом. Мы обязаны проинформировать врачей, чтобы можно было остановить это.
Эта информация распространяется не только среди врачей. В 2011 году утверждения о принудительном извлечении органов впервые появились в ежегодном отчете Госдепартамента США о ситуации с правами человека в Китае. 3 октября 2012 года 106 членов Конгресса США подписали письмо, адресованное Государственному департаменту. В этом письме звучало требование раскрыть общественности информацию об извлечении органов, которую Госдепартамент мог получить из своих источников внутри Китая.
Этому варварскому нарушению прав человека необходимо положить конец, но чтобы остановить, необходимо сначала разоблачить это.
Благодаря все большему числу размещенных в интернете петиций, эта проблема начинает привлекать внимание по всему миру.
You're watching Face to Face on Victoria Indie TV. I'm Paul Stein, your host. We've got Brett Price here from, she's a local practitioner of Falun Gong. And we just finished watching a movie, very powerful video that exposes a lot of things that our media is not really telling us. And most people don't know about this organ harvesting, which is, in my opinion, unlawful, unethical, immoral. It's a sign of the times. Yeah. What do you have to think about it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've thought about it a lot, so I think what I think about most these days is just how to help people peacefully, help it come to an end peacefully. There's, as the video said, there's many pieces of evidence. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence I will read is phone conversations between, you saw David Kilgore and David Mattis. So these phone conversations are one of the main pieces of evidence that this actually is going on. One of the reasons why it's not a global topic worldwide is because there's many very intelligent, good-hearted people, sometimes very highly educated people, who either they're Chinese or not, but they don't believe it's going on. Either they've been so frightened to think any differently than the Communist Party has taught them to, or they just think it's so horrific. How could that possibly be true? Because keep in mind that this is happening to the Falun Gong for a few reasons. The Falun Gong are extremely healthy, right? So not only do they not smoke, not drink, but when we do the exercises, our bodies are in excellent physical shape. So these transcripts actually are from a certified translator who posed as a caller, wanting to get Falun Gong organs, because like we heard, the normal waiting list for an organ transplant in Canada is somewhere around 32 months. In the U.S., it might be something around 24 months. In China, it's 2 weeks wait time to get an organ, like a kidney or something like that. So the phone call went like this: do you have Falun Gong organ suppliers? We used to have, yes. What about now? Yes. Can we come to select, or do you provide directly to us? We provide them to you. What about the price? We discuss after you come. How many Falun Gong suppliers under the age of 40 do you have? Quite a few. Are they male or female? Male. Now, for the male Falun Gong prisoners, how many of them do you have? 7, 8. We have at least 5 or 6 now. Are they from the countryside or from the city? Countryside. Another conversation with Dr. Liu. Could you find organs from Falun Gong practitioners? Let me tell you, we have no way to get them. It's rather difficult to get that now in Guangxi. If you cannot wait, I suggest you go to Guangzhou because it's very easy to get the organs. they are able to look for them nationwide. As they're performing the liver transplant, they can get the kidney for you at the same time. Many places where supplies are short go to them for help. Why is it so easy for them to get it? Because they're an important institution. They contact the judicial system in the name of the whole university. They use organs from Falun Gong practitioners? Correct. And it goes on and on. So there's this understanding that Falun Gong could benefit people, but then there's this, incredible abuse, right, of these healthy people. So what we urge people to do, definitely, people who need organs are sometimes desperate to get them. It's very important to understand and look at the sources of where organs are coming from, especially for doctors or medical professionals, to not only not engage, but to speak out and make sure that this ceases. Because the first role of medicine is to not harm, right?
Do no harm, yeah.
Do no harm. So I recently heard a story of a doctor who read this book. It was here in Vancouver.
State organs,
Yeah.
transplant abuse in China?
Yeah, it's a recently released book. It was mentioned in the video. And he made a decision not to support a certain pharmaceutical company based on their actions and based on this book.
So this affects the West quite a bit.
It does.
Everything we do, from our purchasing power to even when it comes to getting medical treatment overseas, perhaps, that we think, hey, our medical system is bunged up, let's go over there, it might be quick and easy. There may be some things we don't know about,
Medical
right?
tourism,
So
yeah.
this really affects us here in the West.
Yeah, well, going back to the persecution overall, before people's blood are drawn and they're executed on the operating table. And another thing to note is that they're not anesthetized. So their corneas are taken, their organs are taken, and that's the final form of torture. On the death certificate, if there is one, it's suicide, because they had the option to bow to the Communist Party way of thinking, which is atheist and just stepping in line. Because they didn't, that was their own suicide, which of course is a gross violation of every human's rights to have a right of belief and live their lives according to truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. So the way that it affects us here in the West, and things that you might come across every day, chopsticks, Christmas decorations, slippers, things that are made in China, even things like there's medicines that come from China. There's baby formulas, there's bracelets. So there's been so many examples of harmful, not just not great ingredients, but lethal ingredients going into these products. So there's deaths, whether it's people or pets and pet food, babies and baby formula. Terrible. So
there's lots of products that are recalled.
Yeah, recalled
all the time,
from China.
Because they find out that it's got mercury in it, or it's got lead in it, or it's,
So it's this whole moral degradation that's gone on since 1949. It's been the campaign of this cultish Communist Party to have everybody step in line. And granted, there is a level of security that people need to take. No Falun Gong practitioner is calling for, any kind of uprising or any kind of retaliation. In fact, it's really interesting to note that there hasn't been a single documented case of retaliation as long as the persecution has gone on from the Falun Gong. So you can understand how terrible these crimes are. And it's pretty well known, but not a single inside China or outside China, there's not a single record of violent retaliation whatsoever. There's lawsuits around the world. There are definitely petitions and urging. There are peaceful protests. There's hopefully a blossoming of information. There's the Falun Gong practitioners were one of the ones to spearhead the breakdown of the firewall of China in terms of the internet. They actually created the code that allowed the Iranian protesters to break through the internet blockade while they were protesting as well. I forget what it's called, Free Gate, I think it's called. So yeah, just peaceful means, right, to subvert this very illegitimate power that the Communist
Party has. We're talking millions of people, all right? Millions of people that are persecuted, that are put in these torture camps, these labor camps, that have their organs harvested, maybe not millions, but probably hundreds of thousands. What is your opinion, basically? I guess what I'm trying to get at is, our government obviously works with their government. We have trade agreements with these countries, and again, I've never seen this on CBC News. I've never heard about this on the radio. So, could it be possible that our government or our governments here are somewhat accomplice to what's going on over there, because they just want to keep business flowing as usual, get the trades of goods and people come and going. That is the ultimate end goal of this, I guess, this world order of commercial. So, like, what is your opinion, and what is the local opinion of practitioners here about? Obviously, you've been to the Canadian officials. Obviously, people here are talking to our officials here. Is there any support that you're getting? Is there?
Yeah, there is. I mean, definitely the end of the video said it all, where more needs to be done, right? There's no doubt about that. I don't see it, and I should just note that I'm not an official spokesperson for Falun Gong. I'm just a practitioner, a private practitioner. So I'm happy to share my opinion, my personal opinion. Is that it's not, the big picture is not a political picture, right? It's a human rights issue, and every human has a responsibility to react accordingly and not be complicit through silence. So I definitely, and everyone encourages the government, the people in the government, to do what they can with the powers that they are given. Again, more needs to be done, but a few of the things that I know have been done is a recently created Office of Religious Freedom by the Canadian government. I know that a Falun Gong practitioner was invited to that, to the roundtable discussions as it was being created. There's only about 24 people there. So for one of those, 17, I believe, 17 people at this roundtable discussion to create Canada's first Office of Religious Freedom, the fact that someone representing Falun Gong was there is positive.
So is it considered a religion then?
It's not incorrect to say it's a religion, but
it's a spiritual
really,
path?
it's a practice, yeah.
It's a practice.
Yeah. Most correctly, it's a practice. But because, especially in the West, we don't really have a tradition of self-cultivation, just going into the mountain or going into the cave and just doing your thing. We don't really have that. Our traditions are religion, the organized religion of self-cultivation. So if people want to group it that way, then we don't correct them or anything like that. But
you'll participate in the tools here in the West that will bring you acknowledgement and give you support in your quest, which is,
of course, and we do believe in religious freedom for anybody
for
who believes what they want to believe. So that's sort of my understanding of the government, is that on the business side as well, I think it's very difficult to completely avoid business with China, but business with China it's actually very risky. Businesses see that maybe there's some economic opportunity there.
Oh, for sure.
But I always liken it to the trees where I come from in Southern California. These really big old oak trees where they got this big, thick stump and they just flower into the sky. And then what happens one day is they just, boom, hit the ground. Sometimes they'll take out a house. And then you look at the inside and it's completely empty because it's been rotted on the inside.
Yes.
But meanwhile, the flow of this water has gone up to its branches, so it looks okay on the outside, but you don't realize that the whole inside is just rotted out. So if you pay attention to publications like the Epoch Times, Dajiyuan in English, they're pretty much the China experts, because they're independent media and they're pretty much the only media that, inside this culture of fear and violence, that are trusted, right? So they have these amazing connections with sources inside China who will actually tell them what's really happening without fear of repercussion. So thus they are the China experts. So paying attention to the Epoch Times, you can see there's actually recently, I think out of Hong Kong, prediction that the communist government will just collapse under its own corruption within 24 months or very soon. So actually aligning with it and doing deals with it, again, it's a matter of safety. You know, I mean, people can't just sort of stand up and then get the hammer on their head. So one thing that's being done is over 145 million people have signed by their names that they've quit the Communist Party and they renounced the Communist Party. Because what happens is when you're young, you pledge an oath with your fist, and you pledge a blood oath to the Communist Party that you will give up your life for their goals. So what happens is when you renounce the Communist Party, that oath is broken, and then people still go on with their lives. So they still, let's say, if they're a prison guard, you still have to feed your family. You have to go on in life, you know, and not be bring this negative attention to you. So sometimes they'll even use a different name. So one thing I really encourage people to do is to go online. You can go to faluninfo.net and find that petition and join the 145 million people who have renounced the Communist Party. And that will really speak a lot. By the time, it was a major reason why Jiang Zemin began it in the first place, was the fear of so many people, the popularity of it. So it sends a really, really massive message. They're definitely paying attention to every name, you know, and the fact that any kind of international pressure, because their whole modus operandi is not wanting to be found out, right? All this organ harvesting, the persecution. At first, even Falun Gong itself, they wanted to just keep it under the rug. Normally, with other groups, it can be 3 days, and it's finished. The whole thing, the whole group is completely finished in 3 days. With Falun Gong, it's been more than 10 years, and it's only, the tables have reversed now. Now, what I learned from the Epoch Times is that the people who have instigated the persecution, all they're doing is backpedaling to cover their tracks, right? Yeah. So that very internal squabbling and backpedaling and corruption is a very thing that will probably, you know, I don't really know the future, but
who knows?
So in that sense, it definitely affects us here because it's a global economy. It's social media.
Yeah.
The other thing is the pollution and all of that, all of the crimes inflicted on the land. Air and water knows no boundaries either. So pollution starting over there will reach us here. Same with mental corruption and pollution.
Well, it goes around the world. I know China has a lot of coal factories. I don't know if they still use primarily coal for their energy, but I know they are transferring, and I know it. I've heard some rumors online, and I've looked at some information online that this whole thing in Syria, this whole conflict in Syria and what's happening on the east there is really all about supplying China in the future with oil. And that's why they're having a hard time going through Syria. That's why it's a little bit different than what the propaganda machine has told us, that that Assad is gassing his own people, which is why we go into war. But in reality, it's all about that energy and fuel. And like you say, we are all polluting the earth. That's a fact. We know this. It's evidence all around the world, and it's getting worse. But what I find hard to understand is that this is a de facto communist country. De facto means of force, not de jure, not by politeness, not by majority raise their hands or vote. It's by force, and that's pretty much how they got there. So I'm all for, bringing them back, allowing people to backpedal and letting it collapse within itself. But I don't hold my breath in thinking that it's just going to collapse completely, because the powers that be are, I think, in my opinion, above the president. They're above those people. There's people that we don't know about that exist that tell him to carry on these plans. So I just find that I'm not promoting any violent revolution at all in any way, shape, or form. I think peaceful activism is absolutely the way to go, and love is effective. It does affect other people, and when you shine a light in a dark room, it lights up. So I think there is a power to be said about that, and I encourage people here in Victoria and around in local communities to also become more aware. What are other few websites or contact information that you can give out to the viewers that will help them raise awareness or contribute their time or energy or whatever it is?
Yeah, well, definitely faluninfo.net, faluninfo.net is a great source for finding out what's going on currently, current efforts to end this and just allow anyone who wants to practice truthfulness, compassion, tolerance to do so in their own country, if that's China or wherever. It also carries reports about instances of persecution that are happening right here in our backyard. You know, in Vancouver, in Victoria, in Atlanta, Georgia, somebody was just beaten because he probably had some ties to telling a news story that the Communist Party didn't like. So right here on this continent, right here where we are, the chopsticks you might be using might have been packaged by Falun Gong labor camps in very unsanitary means. So learning about those things, being empowered, writing.
So I hear some divestment involved there, like pulling away from your spending habits that you would normally do, right?
Well, I think for me it's investigating the origins. I think there's a lot of education to be done because, like you're saying, the media, you know, haven't really taken this up and told this really important story as much as they.
Well, we're doing it now. So.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Because they're doing wonderful media. Faluninfo.net, clearwisdom.net, and then falundafa.org. Those are great places to always keep up to date about what's going on and be involved, because we need all the voices to bring peace and justice.
We definitely need to do it. Anyways, well, thank you so much for coming on to the show and telling us your information and putting out the word. And I hope that others get inspired by the show and reach out to you.
Thank you.
What do you think about this? What do you think about our involvement here with Canada, with our agreements around the world, and how we partner up with other countries and support these kind of things? Let us know what you think. And I just want to thank you again, Brett, for being on the show. We've had Brett Price on the show here, and it has been awesome. Hopefully we can have you on the show again, and we can further this with a lot more beneficial news and with some updated information that's going on.
Definitely, my pleasure. And you know, there's an open invitation for anyone who wants to learn the exercises of Falun Dafa. It's free all the time.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I'm Paul Stein. You've been watching Face to Face on Victoria Indie TV. We'll see you next time. Thanks again.